Hello and welcome to MashTalk, Mashable's own Google Plus Hangout, where today we are talking about Apple WWDC 2014. It's been a big week for Apple, even though they didn't drop any hardware. It's been a big talk of the week, obviously, their annual developers conference, where they unveiled both Mac OS X Yosemite as well as iOS 8, and we're going to be talking about that, plus much more. I'm Ryan Lytle, Social Projects Manager here at Mashable, and if you are following along, you can tweet us using the hashtag MashTalk or use the Q&A app here in Google+. I want to also introduce you guys to our awesome panel, Pete Paschal, our tech editor, and Christina Warren, our senior tech analyst. Hey to both of you.
What up?
Hello, hello.
So we are going to be talking about first the actual event. Christina was at the Moscone Center here at WWDC here in San Francisco. So Christina, I want to throw it to you first. How did this year's WWDC kind of compare to past years?
Okay, well, first I'm just going to brag a little bit. I'm going to show off my WWDC 14 jacket. It's got a nice little jacket. It's still too big, but it's better than it could have been.
Christina, do you regard that as Apple's first wearable?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the first one of the year, definitely. So no, I mean, the event was, is packed. 6,000 developers are here, and something like 80% of them are first-time WWDC attendees. That's partially because Apple had it as a lottery this year for, you kind of put your name in a hat, and if you got drawn, you got to go, provided you were willing to pay the $1,600 and whatnot. So there are ton of people here, and they're super, super excited. And the event itself, what's really interesting is that, like you said, there wasn't any new hardware stuff, but there were still tons and tons of announcements. And I think that even more than all the user-facing features that were announced for iOS 8 and for OS X Yosemite, and there are some really great ones there, was all the developer stuff. They dedicated a full third of the keynote just to developer stuff, which, in the modern WWDC era, which I kind of call, I guess, like 2005, well, no, I guess 2006 onward, I can't ever really remember having that strong of a period of time dedicated to the developer tools. Certainly not since the iPhone was released. And so the reaction on the ground has just been great. The new features look awesome, and the new tools, I think, for developers is what they're really excited about. And what that means for the rest of us is that we can expect better apps and better ways for our devices all to work together. And that seemed to actually be the underlying theme of the keynote. There were kind of two of them. One was maybe getting away from Google's reliance on, or Apple's reliance on Google a little bit by finally kind of creating some of their own cloud services and putting in some of their own search hooks. But the other thing, I think, and the more prominent thing, was that this is all about showing how your devices can seamlessly work together. And that's something that obviously Microsoft has spent a lot of time wanting to do. Apple's approach is different, but the idea is kind of the same, that you can seamlessly use your phone, your tablet, your Mac, all with the same sorts of stuff without having to go through the current process of having to constantly switch between devices and the pain that's involved with that.
Yeah, and so Pete, you watched from afar in New York, so tell us a little bit kind of your take watching the live stream and kind of how you thought the event went over.
I think it went great. I mean, Apple's current rock star, Federighi, did most of the talking, and he's pretty amazing. Developers like him, the public likes him, the camera likes him, camera loves him, especially his hair.
Dude, he was a superstar. His hair, you guys, he was on stage 90% of the time. I can't even imagine giving that much stuff. Sorry, go on, Pete. Just wanted to comment.
No, it's okay. It's pretty. I totally agree. He was pretty awesome. He's great. So that was good. A lot of the changes, with software, it's interesting about WWDC because with hardware revelations, there's a lot of leaks. You tend to know almost everything about the device before it comes out. With the software, it's a different story. So here there were some sort of genuine surprises. There were some they were kind of thought they were working on that, but this is seeing it actually realized. It was very cool. So this was kind of like a bigger shakeup than I was kind of expecting. Not that there was a huge revolution in iOS 8 or even Yosemite. I think there could have been a little more bold with some of the design changes in Yosemite, but It was, seeing things like continuity, which we're going to talk up a little bit later. That was like, okay, wow, I didn't know you were working on that exactly, and that's pretty amazing. So yeah, I was very, very happy about it. I think to Christina's point, the developer focus, I mean, in today's era, I mean, it's so funny. You think back to the first iPhone when Steve Jobs, they didn't even have real apps, and Steve Jobs was sort of reluctant to even open it up to that. And you think, like, how could that even have been the thought, like looking at today and like how essential developers are to making like iPhone the platform it is. It's just like, so I mean, to see them, sort of see those kind of developer-focused features take center stage for at least for a little while in what is supposed to be the public-facing keynote. I mean, it's kind of the evolution of that to this, like, okay, this kind of act for that culture, in technology is just the dominant force now. So, it's pretty cool.
So Pete, you talked about you brought up Yosemite, and that's where we really want to start here. And Apple released or unveiled this, and it's a cleaner look, and it gives you more opportunities to kind of connect your iPhone with your Mac as well. So let's talk about some of those new features that are coming to Yosemite.
Yeah, Yosemite, it's cool. I mean, like, I think I got to jump right into continuity because that was the thing that I was kind of like, wow, like my eyes kind of went wide. Like, that's pretty impressive. And that's not just Yosemite on the OS X, it also involves iOS 8. But the idea of, like, the absolute seamlessness of the working on something and just relaying over. So you start your email on an iPhone and you kind of put it down and then you just touch one button on the click one thing on your Mac and you pick up right where you left off. And this is a combination of a few different technologies working. Obviously, we've had collaborating in the cloud for a long time, but this takes it to a level of convenience that is just, yeah, this is how it should be. I shouldn't even have to, fire up a web browser, to figure out where that service is on my Mac and then take over. It's really like the devices know each other. I'm logged into both on my account. Like, why doesn't it just know what I'm doing? And it's like, boom, now it does. It's like, that's exactly what we've been looking for. That's what we want. This is where, as is said often about Apple products, like the technology almost disappears. It's what you're doing. Like it's really just there. It's a window to what you're doing, and you don't have to figure out browsers and whatever. So that was amazing. The design, I mean, really cool. I'm gotta say, like I said this on Twitter, I'm gonna miss that old Safari icon. It was so detailed, the compass. I mean, it was just so nice. And now it's like, okay, I get it. Everything's flat design, less texture, more iconic for icons. But it's I'm gonna it's funny. I used to argue against skeuomorphism, but I mean, icons, I don't know. The icons are okay, but now it's like, okay, that's fine. The layers, it's very good. Like iOS 7, I know a lot of people were like, eh, but I was like, I thought it was pretty good. I think a lot of the negative reaction to iOS 7 was mainly the animations, which we haven't seen Yosemite the final version yet, so but I doubt it's going to have that kind of like screen jumping out at you kind of stuff. So I think there's going to be more of a positive response to that. Safari, the upgrades look pretty neat. It's becoming, more this centralized thing for a lot of what you do, like your RSS feeds, reading lists, the integration with Spotlight, the Spotlight search, that was pretty neat. Just this kind of like not really out Googling Google. I mean, because they couldn't really out Google and search, but it's really like not having the baggage of Google when you do this kind of thing. So like with Google, you always have to raise one eyebrow with whatever they do and sort of go like, well, how are they making money off this, with my search results or whatever. And I'm not saying Apple isn't a business or whatever, but they don't make their money explicitly from search and advertising. So when they do a service like this, you have a little more confidence that it's like, oh, this is really a convenience and not just some new way for them to glean information off me. So, there's all that stuff. What am I forgetting? Christina, there's a bunch of features I'm forgetting.
Yeah, Christina actually has the icons up
Yeah, I actually have the icon screen up, so you
Oh,
can kind of
wow.
see.
Yes, you do. Look at this.
So you can actually see what some of the details look like. And what's interesting, I'm not sure how well you can see the detail on that. If when I press the spacebar, can you see the details on the icon? Is that popping up?
Not really.
No.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so anyway, so you can't really see it too well, but these are all the new icons, and they are very similar to iOS 7, but they actually are a little bit skeuomorphic. There's more shadow. There's a little bit of texture on the contacts and the dictionary, for instance. There's a little bit of bevel. The trash can still has different states. So this is the trash can full, and this is the trash can empty. It still has kind of that skeuomorphic kind of look on it, but it's much more refined. And so, some of the big changes, obviously, like if you look at the reminders icon, how it currently exists and how the new one looks, it's basically like the iOS version. But also, they've done things with, the Game Center icon has finally been updated. And FaceTime and obviously Safari and even Time Machine all have new looks. So they put a lot, obviously, into that look and feel. And let me just, getting away from there. So, I think you covered most of the major, new features. There's a lot of stuff under the hood, but they basically did the under the hood stuff last year with Mavericks. And so with Yosemite, it really is about a whole new design language. There's going to be a dark mode, which is really cool. One of the neatest features, I think, is with the Notification Center. So they've actually kind of fused Notification Center and what's historically been the dashboard, the widget view. So now you can actually have widgets customized, even third-party ones, installed in the Notification Center. And so the default view is the today screen, just like it is when you drop down on your iPhone or iPad. But you can customize how that looks and feels. And you can also add in widgets like a calculator widget, third parties like a score star update. And they're actually going to let developers sell those widgets in the App Store, in the Mac App Store. Before, Apple always had like a free widget download place, but they've never had an explicit place for people to be able to sell widgets. And there are some really great ones that, frankly, should be able to monetize. There's one I use religiously called Deliveries, which, they have an iPhone app, but I really hope he, puts it in for a couple of bucks on the Mac App Store. But the fact that they're letting third parties access that is really cool. And speaking of continuity, that's one of my favorite features about that too. The idea is that you can start something on your Mac or your iPad and then pick it up on your laptop or your desktop. But that's also going to be open to third parties. We expect, and historically what happens is Apple will announce these really great features and it'll only work with the Apple stuff. And it's like, okay, but what if I want to use it with something else? Well, they're going to be able to. I don't know the specific rules, that they have to be distributed through the Mac App Store or what, but even if you just have an iOS app and a website, you can use continuity mode. So if you're on a website, in Safari, and it recognizes that that's where you're at, and you've got the app on your phone, you can pick up and vice versa. So they're doing a lot with that. My favorite thing, I think, in addition to some of the notifications thing, like just for saving me time, is the fact that they're now routing all of the messages that go through your iPhone through the Messages app. So your SMS messages will be routed through, and you can send SMS messages back through. Now, this isn't. This is actually just taking place through the Bluetooth. So basically, the Bluetooth connection from your phone is going to your laptop, and it's sending it through your phone. Your phone's making the data connection, but you can use and view your history, view past things in the Messages app, and you can also accept and make phone calls from your Mac, which is awesome, especially for those of us who tend to take a lot of calls with Bluetooth headsets or have better setups on our computers and don't want to have to, unplug this, headset, plug it into my phone, now take the call. You can do it all in one place. So that's.
I had a question about this that occurred to me when I announced this thing. So it's like your SMSs now, not just iMessage, comes through on your Mac. Does this inherently make two-factor authentication less secure? Because they're getting those authorization codes through SMS, and now they can get them on PC.
The thing is that you'd have to authenticate your phone, and that account, it's proximity based, so it would have to be near your Mac. So if it's, it would be less secure in the sense that if you have somebody's phone and you have someone's laptop, or if it's someone you work with or a family member and it's, you know, within 25 feet of you or whatever, then you might be able to do that. But it's only going to route the stuff when the phone and the computer are nearby.
Gotcha. Okay. The proximity is a good factor, because I mean that's essentially what two-factor authentication is, that both devices are close to each other, presumably
exactly.
in the same person.
Exactly.
Ownership.
Yeah. Right, and there are actually third-party solutions for two-factor that even use Bluetooth as the same idea, saying, okay, you've authorized this machine as being attached to you, and if both of them see one another, we can send you information like, you know, auth codes and whatnot. So I think that's the same way, and I'm sure that Apple will have something just like they do now with HealthKit, that if you want to enable sending SMS messages, you have to explicitly grant it to that Mac. It's not going to be, you know, just any computer. It's going to be something you'll have to explicitly grant and enter in. But that's a good point. I'll actually reach out to them and get clarification on that. But it is proximity based, so that's the important thing to note. Your messages are never actually being stored or, you know, coming through directly on your Mac. If your phone is someplace else or you lose it, you're not going to get those SMS messages. That you have to be near one another.
Right. Okay, so we've hit a lot with Mac OS X Yosemite, and so now we want to really shift our focus on iOS 8. There are a bunch of new features that Apple unveiled, and Christina, I'm going to throw it back to you. Talk to us a little bit about maybe one of your favorite features in iOS 8, and then we're really going to drill down into some of the others.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much stuff in iOS 8. That's kind of the scary thing. There are so many new features. I was talking to people yesterday at some of the sessions, and they were like, how do we miss this feature during the keynote? You know, there was so much stuff. So I guess for me, I think one of the biggest changes is the fact that apps are now going to be able to talk to each other. They're going to be able to have extensions that they can create, and extensions can even work in Safari for iOS so that apps can talk to one another. Now, this is similar to kind of what, you know, Facebook is doing with their app links and some of the other things, but it's more explicit. So these are hooks that will make data also make allow it information from, you know, one application available in others, and that opens up a huge scope of possibilities, because this basically means, like, for instance, one of my most used apps is a password manager, OnePassword, and it's frustrating because if I'm in Safari or if I'm in another app and I need to look up a password, I've got to get out of the app, open OnePassword, unlock it, grab the password, go back into the new app, paste it, and go. This has the option now to basically say OnePassword could create an extension so that for Safari or for other apps, so that other apps could plug in and use passwords from OnePassword that's, you know, on my phone without me ever having to do that. It would all take place seamlessly in the background. So this is something that the developers have been asking for years, and it's something that Android does a bit better already. So that's a big thing. I would also say the fact that the new keyboard, the predictive typing, which is obviously something that Android has had for a really long time, but the fact that not only do they have this new predictive typing kind of, you know, it's kind of like SwiftKey-esque thing, but they also will let third-party keyboards become installed and be used in other apps. So you can install something like Swift or SwiftKey or Flexi, which is a popular iOS software keyboard that only works with a select number of apps. They will all be installed and used in other applications, you know, at the user's consent. And you know, people have joked, they're like, you know, Steve Jobs would have never done that, and he might not have. But frankly, this is probably a decision that is to their benefit, and that maybe even if Steve Jobs never would have wanted a third-party keyboard have the ability to be installed, I don't think that having that option is a bad thing. I think that actually in this day and age, especially with all the different languages and the different ways we communicate, and you know, people's different finger sizes and whatnot, that it's something that will keep people more in the iOS ecosystem than going to Android. So those are just two that, you know, that come to mind. There's also things like Metal for game development, more things on the back end. Again, having widgets in the notification center, the ability to quick reply to text messages when they come through, and just kind of, you know, the continuity feature, obviously working with Mac stuff. But I think the inter-app communication stuff is not something that I really was hoping to see with iOS 7, and obviously they couldn't do it because they did the big redesign. And people I talked to, we kind of come to the consensus that, you know, last year was kind of like the rebuilding year, and even in my iOS 7 preview, I remember saying, you know, this is a lot like OS 10.0. So it's kind of like, you know, a restart. And you can't expect to have all the same features and to have the same stability and a set that maybe the previous it's going to be the foundation for better things to come. And I think that this is kind of proving that. So like they started with iOS 7, they got the basics of the look and feel. They've improved and iterated on that. But now that they've got iOS 7 installed on 90% of devices or something, and they've got a lot of the bugs worked out, can now start to add in these additional features to make it more robust and in a more modern OS and better able to compete, frankly, with things like Android and even Windows Phone.
Yeah, so Pete, I want to pass it along to you. Kind of thinking about this from a consumer angle, what features do you think kind of like the average user is going to be most excited about with iOS 8?
Well, the thing that people get most excited about when I tell them about it is that iOS 8 is going to have a way to see which apps are killing your battery the most.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's always the biggest complaint that people have with me. Like, I love the iPhone. I really wish it would last a full day, like they say. Well, the issue is sometimes your screen's too bright. Your apps, are draining some stuff. But now this is finally the step people are going to be able to, oh, look, Facebook is actually like taking half my battery. I should really either quit that app or take it out of background app refresh, so that right now you're kind of flying blind. You're like, okay, you have this list of, even if background app refresh is a thing you should manage and, disable on certain apps that aren't essential, you don't know which ones are doing it the most and which ones are, the biggest violators. So now this is going to be very helpful for people to disable, and it's going to be very helpful for developers, actually.
Yes.
Even though they have their own tools, if they get a lot of people reporting like, oh man, look, we're draining like 30% of the battery on this stuff. We got to get like way more efficient about our processes because we don't want people to start uninstalling our app over this. So I think that is going to be a really, really great tool. People have been asking for a while. It's finally there in iOS 8. The iCloud Drive stuff for both OS X and iOS is very interesting. One, it's finally giving this sort of file system that iCloud has been lacking compared to other solutions out there, but also the fact that it's opening up solutions in some ways, particularly for businesses. Like if you want to use Box, with I'm not exactly quite sure like the layers on top of this, but you can use these third-party services with your apps. Now that's sort of a thing that people have been waiting for. So there's a couple of things. One thing I'm kind of excited about that I don't think quite went far enough is family sharing.
Yeah.
Now I think it's a great idea. Now if a kid makes an in-app purchase, the grown-up gets a notification. They can approve or decline. That's great. I kind of wanted to see full-on user profiles too, though, which is a separate thing. Where it's like you want to be able to have your son, your 4-year-old son, take your iPad and be assured, he can't get into certain apps altogether, beyond just the iCloud, iTunes kind of ID stuff. You can kind of do that in a kludgy way now, and there are third-party solutions that go even further. But I kind of wanted to see a homegrown solution like Android serves up rather. What else? There's like Christina already went over the keyboards, which I'm kind of looking forward to. There's a thing that's being reported, which is interesting to me. Because it's more of this context awareness stuff, which is the lock screen app suggestions. So you're going to see in iOS 8 on the lock screen, sometimes anyway, you're going to see like an app icon. And if you slide up on that app icon, it's going to be sort of opposite the camera icon, but if you slide up on it, you're going to see some suggestions for apps around you. And it's going to basically, oh, there's a store across the street, there's an app for this store, maybe you want it, or like a restaurant or whatever. That's interesting. I like the idea of sort of doing more context stuff, and that's definitely like the pointing the way for, I think, future products, which we may discuss in the future. I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think this is actually using like iBeacon tech, but it's a step in that direction of sort of context-based stuff. But yeah, the message features, everyone's been saying about the new message stuff that Apple's sort of trying to outdo Snapchat. I don't get that with that stuff, and Christina, maybe you can clarify with this too. Like the from what I understand, the stuff where the messages self-destruct, it's purely a memory-saving thing. You know, it's like, you know, you want to keep these video messages for, you know, whatever it is, a day, 30 days, a year, forever, depending on how much storage you have. And it's not like you can control what you send out when that self-destructs. Am I reading that right?
You are. So I mean, and that's the key difference. But it does kind of make every video or voice message ephemeral unless you specifically save it, which is interesting. I mean, so you know that's kind of the idea that unless you specifically save it, it's going to disappear after a period of time, which you know I think might lead some people to use it more Snapchat-like. But you're right. The reason that they're doing that is for you know so it doesn't take up too much space. I think that what they're really doing is they're making it a more robust WhatsApp or other group messenger style solution, right. which and I'm not saying that they're copying WhatsApp. I thought it was actually funny that the WhatsApp guy was saying that Apple's copying them since he copied BlackBerry Messenger. But it does make the idea of group messaging a lot better. The fact that you can send your location and share it for a very specific period of time, I really like that because a lot of times if I'm trying to plan a meeting with friends, that's one of those things I like using WhatsApp for and Message Me and Group Me and some other services. The fact that you can view all the media that's being discussed in a chat in one view is really nice. Also, you know, like as you know, we're saying that the voice and the video messages. But I think that they've done a lot more, I think, to really make messages more robust for discussions and for group and for one-on-one chats, and that I think is smart. I mean, they've got you know hundreds of millions of iMessage users, and a lot of us use that as one of our primary messaging platforms, and they don't want to see people forced to use other solutions because not just because not everybody they know is on iMessage, but because you know the other services offer better features. So I think that that's really that's interesting. I'm with you on the family sharing thing. It would have been great if they had introduced user profiles, but I do think that just the fact that now if you have the same credit card, everybody, you know, on your up to 6 people can have, can share all the same music, movies, apps, you know, is a really great thing, and the parents will get, you know, the approval, you know, code will come up, you know, that hey, we need you to approve this purchase or decline it. It is a really great step, especially after the lawsuit that they had. In-app purchase just for amassed multiple iTunes collections, you know, between two or more people, and it's like, okay, I bought this movie. Well, I already had this movie. Well, I couldn't get it to play because our Apple TV is connected to a different account. You know, now we can kind of bring them together, which is really great.
Yeah, and actually, Christina, you mentioned Apple TV, and we had a question, have a question from the community from Paul Zagayski, and he asked, are developers, you know, talking about anything, you know, specifically, I guess, Metal and other items in regard to their plans for Apple TV, and what has been the buzz about Apple TV at WWDC this week? Obviously, it wasn't really brought up during the keynote, so what are your thoughts there?
It's not mentioned at all. Well, I think the fact that it wasn't mentioned at all was really interesting, and actually even in the developer sessions there's not anything specific for Apple TV, which to me suggests, I could be wrong, but it suggests that maybe a new product is in the works, which would make sense. But I think Metal is probably our best opportunity to look at what that could look like, because a lot of the game developers that I talked to were super excited about Metal. And what Metal basically is it's similar to AMD has a similar sort of product, but this is for the first time we've ever seen it for mobile devices and tablets, where instead of having to code to OpenGL, which is what every iPhone game uses now, they can code more directly to the bare metal, the core GPU of the phone or the tablet. And what that means is that developers can get a lot more power, not just the graphics power from the GPU, but also the compute power. So you can do a lot more things. I'm echoing, I think, out of you, Pete.
You're echoing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could mute.
Oh, I'm echoing.
Yes.
All right. Pete, if you can get headphones or something, I got you muted for now.
But anyway, but the whole big thing promise behind Metal is that it's a lot more like console games, and so the basically means that they can bring console-like experiences to the iPhone or the iPad. And EA showed a demo of Plants vs Zombies from that basically is the same sort of thing that they have out for the console, and it's really really impressive. Who knows what the battery impact is? That was kind of my first question, but what a lot of game developers I spoke to talked about is, okay, if we've got this great potential to do these console-level graphics on these chips, what if we had something that like had the power of an iPad Air but was in a smaller box? And since the Apple TV already has, I think right now is an A5X processor. It's an A5X processor.
Peter, you plugged in?
Hold on. How's that?
I think, yeah, you're good.
All right.
No, never mind.
No.
All right. Pete, I'm gonna have to mute you for now.
No.
Okay.
We'll bring you back, we promise, and then we'll shut up. Okay, so, but anyway, what they're thinking is, the Apple TV already had, when it was introduced, a good processor for its time. If they're able to do that same sort of thing with a future version, that could really open up the possibilities of playing games on the TV. And whether Apple wants to go in that direction or not, I don't know. But I almost feel like if you've got graphics that are that good, it kind of begs for like a bigger screen, frankly. And especially they were talking about the iOS controllers, which right now they're not great, but there are a number of them out there. So I think that's what a lot of the game developers I spoke to are thinking about. Apple didn't say anything explicitly about Apple TV, but what they did say in terms of some of the development stuff leads people to think, both not just with Metal, but also with making it easier to design apps for multiple screen sizes. Makes people think, okay, this will be potentially another vector in the future, and that would be great.
Awesome. Pete, I think you might be good again.
Cool. Yeah, I just dialed in again, I think.
Perfect.
Just have to switch the
Perfect.
preferences.
Okay, so yeah, we wrapped up kind of our talk with Apple TV and Metal. Let's talk a little bit about Health App and HealthKit. I know there was a lot of buzz around this announcement, and now that we kind of know what it is, can you explain for those who are watching what we can really expect from Health App, HealthKit, and maybe the future of kind of fitness tracking for Apple?
Yeah, well, HealthKit is sort of the developer side platform that I think basically Apple is providing, so that any sort of third party can basically use it to integrate their app into the centralized hub on the iPhone that will gather this information. And on the other side of it, and this is where Apple was very wise, they approached healthcare providers. So that the idea is you get some kind of, you're keeping up with your health somehow, whether it's your insulin level, your fitness, your activity, blood pressure, and you have some kind of device and some kind of way of putting it in the iPhone. Once it's in there, there's the other side of the pipe, which is that what this information goes to, presumably a healthcare provider of some kind, so that there is this sort of end-to-end consideration of the concept anyway, and we'll see how that sort of plays out as people sort of get involved with this. But the idea is, you do a blood pressure reading, say it's out of the norm, immediately your doctor can know. Obviously, this is all opt-in, and you decide you have all control, and they were very careful to state that you have control over your information and where it goes. But sometimes you do want that. You're going to want that information to go out to a doctor somewhere and have them be alerted and let you know what to do as soon as possible. So like I say, I think the very, very smart thing that Apple did in this initiative is getting the healthcare community involved from the start, which the other platforms are sort of inching toward that. And you can look at anyone from Fitbit to Jawbone to Samsung, but there's always this thing, and they've dealt with it to some extent, but there's always the issue of like, well, I got this data, what do I do with it? And there's sort of like self-improvement is certainly a thing. Okay, well, I need to walk more, I need to work out more, but Apple is like, right off the bat sort of raising the game. Well, this is healthcare information. Let's involve the healthcare community, and let's make this not just a hobby, let's make this like a serious way people are going to track their health, because the technology is there, and it's really just there are problems and sort of things to figure out from both a technological perspective and a regulatory perspective, but Apple's like, let's work those out, because this could be really, really awesome for the people who don't just want it, but need it.
Yeah, and I think what's also really, I think you're definitely right. Like the fact that they went to the health providers first was so crucial, because that's usually the last step, and they're the people that are kind of the gatekeepers of a lot of this data that can make it actionable for a lot of users. So that's really smart. But what's also, I think, interesting if you think about it, so many healthcare professionals use iPads and iPhones. And so that opens up possibilities for there to be specialty apps maybe designed for a certain hospital that could talk to, maybe HealthBook or get other things, that could kind of exist that way. Or I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy here, but what if there was like, I don't know, like something you like wore on your wrist or something that managed to track a bunch of your data that could then like, get sent immediately to your healthcare provider when you, go in if you opt in, so they can just see, oh, this is all the data, and I can view it in a different way than how you view it in your app.
That's genius. You should patent that idea.
There you go. The other piece that we wanted to hit regarding iOS 8 involves kind of the smart home initiative. And again, there was a lot of buzz going into WWDC regarding what could Apple unveil regarding smart home initiatives and efforts. And they unveiled HomeKit. So, Christina, can you explain what that is and what this could potentially mean down the line?
Yeah, so, and actually, Lance and I were in a HomeKit session yesterday, and I'm finishing up an article that will go up very soon after this Hangout, kind of giving a good overview of that. So HomeKit is kind of Apple's way of wanting to set a standard for how the dreaded Internet of Things things work together. So how things like your Hue light bulbs, the Nest thermostat, you might have like an automatic, dimmers or maybe something like a drop cam. All these sorts of devices that right now there are a number of solutions that work at kind of creating a hub around home automation. There's Revolve, there's SmartThings, there's Zone Off. But Apple, what they're doing is they're doing two things. One, they're creating kind of a set of standards that users can build into their apps directly so that apps can be aware to other devices. And two, they're also building kind of a standard way of being able to control things and name things from maybe to think that there might be an interface where you can manage what's happening in your home. And the way that it works is kind of neat. It's kind of, built on the precipice that anything that is like kind of HomeKit, authorized, similar to what Apple does with their, made for iPhone program, would be able to, would say, okay, this means that the software and the device itself are all going to be aware of one another. And that's important because it means that if I'm in a room that has both light bulb and maybe it has some sort of lock or maybe even like a sound system, I could set up actions to make them work together so that if I can control them both at the same time, or certain things can take place. But the idea is that they're aware of one another and they're aware of the states that one another are in. So really, I think right now is about setting the standard for making this dead simple. And I think that's the key takeaway that regular users should have the home automation space, is seeing that everybody has a different app. There are no real set of standards. You've got a couple of ad hoc solutions for wanting to do management, but most of those are kind of truncated dashboards or just like icons that take you to a different app launcher. And Apple's trying to create a way to make it all work together really easily so that you can, A, set this stuff up super easily. Like that's one of the big things, that when you buy one of these devices, setting it up and bringing it into your home is not a problem. And B, that they all have kind of a similar way that they can be controlled and managed, whether you're in your home or away from your home, and that they can talk to one another. Which I think is the real potential of a lot of this stuff. It's when you can kind of chain how these things can work. So it's really a concentrated effort, and this is at the system level. I think that Apple is providing these libraries, APIs, building this support in. So it's not like some of the other solutions where you still kind of have to rely on third party and whatever their support might be, something that encourage to build in from the ground that will natively controlled by your phone or your tablet. If that makes sense.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. The last part is the key thing with that when these devices are aware of the state of what they're controlling, and because they might not be controlling everything, so it's like as long as there's a centralized place where there's a what is on, what's off, what's the setting, and then it's like, okay, then I know what to do with this thing that I'm controlling. That's kind of what has been lacking until now. If the iPhone can be that sort of hub, great. There was a lot of talk about, not a lot of talk, part of the rumor was that, maybe the Apple TV might eventually get this kind of hub ability. That could take it to a new level. So yeah, I was very pleased with HomeKit because, initially the rumor was like, oh, platform, and then it was like, oh no, it's just gonna be this certification thing. But actually, it turned out it was actually more than certification. It was actually a real attempt to unify this stuff. So I hope it depends on people building to it. With Google purchasing Nest, I don't know if I just hope they see the support, because it all depends on how many individual apps and solutions sort of tie themselves into this. And I think there needs to be a bit of more of a push there. And it's obviously early days. The keynote was 2 days ago, but they need to push more. So they got to make sure these people are pushed into it, because I don't think they're going to. They're still going to tiptoe unless it's like, oh yeah, I need to be in that. I'm not quite getting that yet, but if that happens, if they get a critical mass of these things doing this, then it's boom. This could be the center, because there's a big advantage because so many people have iPhones. I mean, it's like
I was going to say exactly.
Why not?
Well, I mean, I think you just answered your own question. I mean, I think that for most of the manufacturers, that will be their drive. I think even Nest, it's like, because I guarantee you that if you did a survey of how many Nest owners are iPhone owners or Android owners, that the vast majority would be iPhone owners. Like, I guarantee you.
Well, the other side of that is a lot of these companies do want to be the centralized solution in addition to having like an app. They see themselves as a platform. So that's kind of the thing. It's sort of kind of not entirely giving up that strategy, but ceding a part of it to Apple so that you have this big distribution. I mean, that's sort of in the essential dilemma with a lot of services, like with any app. Like, do I take advantage of Apple's huge footprint or do my own thing? And because this field is so new, there's a lot of people with dreams of grandeur and thinking like, oh, we're going to be the smart home standard, but there's so many of them, and it's like, I think they need to be practical about it and sort of, do you want to see this vision realized as soon as possible, or do you want to chase your dream of like being the smart platform? And it's like, I hope they opt for the former, and that like, I want this stuff now, and I don't want smart things or whoever else to get to the point 10 years from now where it happens. I mean, we could do it now if everyone just built a HomeKit.
Yeah. Okay, so this has been a jam-packed hangout, and we have one more thing to get to, and we're going to make this very quick. So along with iOS 8 and with Mac OS X Yosemite and all the features that come with that, Apple also unveiled a new programming language. And I know that when this happened during the keynote, there was a huge kind of eruption of applause from developers. And so, Christina, I want to throw this to you and with a question from the audience. This is from Nilesh. And he asks, is Swift a direct replacement of Objective-C? And this is going to get kind of dev-heavy, I'm sure. And what are developer thoughts on the matter?
Direct replacement, no. It's an augmentation for right now, but I think that it's being positioned in a way that could potentially, at least for Cocoa stuff, be a replacement. But for right now, it works side by side with Objective-C. And they're certainly putting a lot of emphasis in this, and you can certainly write full apps in Swift, but it's not a direct replacement because, at least from what I can tell right now, you can't do everything with it that you could do with Objective-C. And also, realistically speaking, Objective-C is not going to go away anytime soon. It's going to still exist. So it works side by side, but it is, I think, going forward, going to be the preferred way of interacting with Cocoa and Cocoa Touch APIs. So, and the big news here is, new programming language. best kept secret ever. Like, nobody was expecting this, and developers are super excited because a lot of the things that Swift does is that it takes a lot of the syntax components of more modern languages like Ruby and ECMAScript and JavaScript and Rust and even some things from Google's Go, although they're not that similar, and it brings them to the Mac and the iOS world, and what that does is that helps lower the barrier of entry for programmers who are either too entrenched in existing systems like C# or doing things with Ruby or Python, and they don't want to learn Objective-C because they don't have a background with that, but they still want to build iOS and Mac apps, and so it's letting them kind of have an easier way forward. And then the secondary part is that it is actually, is looking like the way that it compiles and works with the LLVM compiler. Sorry, nerds. Sorry for the nerd talk. That'll make sense to like 5 of you. Because of how it interacts with the LLVM compiler, things are a lot faster too. So it has the potential to be fast, hence its name, but it's also an easier syntax for people. And then as part of it, there's also this new within Xcode, there's kind of this new like sandbox mode where you can start to workspace mode, whatever, where you can actually get like live code previews as you're doing things, which is a really great way to learn, but also to kind of see what's happening, and you can kind of code examples and see how stuff plays out before you actually put it in your main program, compile it, and see that it doesn't work. So there are a lot of aspects to it, but it's a right now, we're still just getting the details. I do think it will eventually replace Objective-C, but that's going to be way down the line. Every developer I've spoken to, almost without exception, that's been the thing that they've been most excited about. And I think that this it's kind of a rejuvenation in a lot of senses to the whole kind of Mac ecosystem, because it does potentially open up a lot of new things, but also for developers that also develop in other languages, it makes it less potentially it makes it less cumbersome to switch back and forth between doing some of the stuff they might do in Ruby and then writing for iOS. The key takeaway for regular users, I think, is just that this is going to be tools that are going to let developers do things, make faster apps, maybe build apps faster, do more rapid prototyping, and also bring in a whole new generation of developers that might otherwise not be Objective-C first types of people. So I think that right now we might not see a big difference, but 12 months from now, when we're at WWDC 2015, and we look back at all the new apps that have come because of Swift, because of the new iOS APIs, because of some of the other stuff, we're going to go, wow, this has had a really big impact on what people are building and what people are doing with software, and that's always really exciting. And if you'd asked me, is Apple's going to introduce a new programming language, I'd have been like, yeah, okay. So kudos to them, and even double kudos, triple kudos for keeping it a secret, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I wanted to get your guys' predictions, but I think we're going to leave that for another Hangout, because we have packed this Hangout with so much information. It's going to be a lot to already digest. I just don't want to even go any further with that. So to everyone who's watching, we recapped the WWDC keynote. We talked about iOS 8. We talked about Mac OS X Yosemite. We talked about Swift. If you have any more questions or any other thoughts, if you want to share your thoughts on the actual keynote, you can send that to us through on Twitter with the hashtag MashTalk. But we're going to have a lot more conversations about this, and I'm sure many Hangouts to come as we look forward to what Apple may have in the fall. And both of these, Mac OS X Yosemite and iOS 8, we're expecting to come out in the fall. So we'll have a lot more to say about that. So thank you all again for watching. Thank you to Pete and to Christina for, as always, sharing their expertise. And we'll see you all again next time. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.